this is Lamenter's Jail, and this video is a full guide on how to defeat Morgott the Omen King at rune level 1, weapon level 0. But before I get into the actual guide on how to dodge all of his moves and beat him with melee and all that, I just wanted to show you the easiest possible way to bypass this fight without even actually fighting. This method is what you'll want to use if you just want to skip the Morgott fight entirely and just get into the end game of Elden Ring without actually learning anything. And there's nothing crazy that you need in order to do this. You just need the Unseen Form sorcery, as well as the Assassin's Gambit Ash of War and the Poison Mist incantation. And then you just need the stuff that allows you to actually cast those spells, such as the Marika's Scar Seal, which allows you to use Poison Mist because it gives you the 12 faith necessary. And then the Intelligence Not Crystal Tear will allow you to do the Unseen Form right at the beginning of the fight. And that's what you'll do. You'll cast Unseen Form and then enter the arena and then just go kind of hug the wall and travel along the right side of the arena until you get kind of close to Morgott, and then you'll just crouch and travel the rest of the way around to get behind him while still hugging the wall. You have to use Assassin's Gambit when you're super close so that he doesn't hear you sneaking up to him, but you'll just do that when you're in that random little corner by the rock. And then you can approach him, and as soon as you get to the place where you're kind of standing right next to the throne and he hasn't seen you yet, just stay crouching and you've pretty much beat him at this point. As long as you stay crouching, he won't see you, and you can just crouch here forever and he'll never see you. Both casting Poison Mist and drinking the blue mana potion aren't gonna trigger Morgott's aggression because they don't actually make any sound technically. So you can just keep crouching there forever and cast Poison Mist, and that will poison him. It'll do about 1200 damage or so, and then you can cast Poison Mist again, drink a blue mana potion whenever you get low on your blue mana, and really just cast Poison Mist over and over and over until you win. It does take a little while because this is like a mid-game boss, so he's got a bunch of health and Poison Mist is really slow, but it doesn't require any skill whatsoever, so literally anyone should be able to do this. And once you've beat him this way, congratulations, you've now unlocked the Forbidden Lands at level 1, so awesome. You're now almost officially in the endgame. There is no official endgame, but that's what I would consider to be the endgame. And now I'll show you how to defeat him the normal way, and this is actually not that hard. As long as you are aware of everything that Morgott does, you can make this fight really quick. And for the actual fight, the best weapon that I could recommend using is any weapon that can use the square off Ash of War. I just use the broadsword because you can purchase it from that merchant by the beach by the starting area of the game in Limgrave, but any straight sword really works just fine. And as for the neutral position in this fight, as in the position that you want to keep returning to whenever you're not doing something else, that's just directly in front of Morgott, right in his face, right in front of him. And you have to be there because Morgott will use moves that require you to dodge either left or dodge right, so you can't be more towards either side, because if you are and he uses one of those other moves that requires you to dodge towards the other side, then that's going to be bad for you, so you got to be kind of in the middle. This Holy Spear Charge move that you're seeing him do right now is something that I love to see because it's really easy to dodge. All you have to do is wait until the spear tip is right about to hit you, and then you just dodge forward and to the right, and that will kind of put you to Morgott's right side as he kind of passes by you with his spear. You can do a light attack directly after dodging, but then anytime you end up either to his side or behind him whenever he finishes the spear charge, he's always going to do the sword hammer swing next, and that move is awesome because it's another very predictable move. It's really a move that you'll want to memorize because it comes out all the time, just out of neutral as well as in combos, and it always follows up other moves such as the spear charge. Whenever you do see this sword hammer swing, all you have to do is just wait just a half second for him to start swinging his weapons, and then you dodge kind of into his armpit on the right side, basically. You have enough time to do a light square off attack as soon as you do this dodge, and then you'll have to anticipate other moves because he does recover from doing this pretty quickly. And just considering this attack is very predictable and happens all the time, it is a good move to learn how to parry if that's something you're interested in doing. You can see the parry timing here. It is a little bit of an early parry, it feels like, but it's pretty easy to parry once you figure out how. This next move that you're about to see him use, the overhead hammer slam, is very, very, very common to be used after the sword hammer swing. As long as you're still kind of in front of Morgott when he finishes the sword hammer swing, he's most likely going to do this next. And there is a bit of a wind up, so you do have time to see that he's doing this and then prepare yourself to dodge it to the left and then anticipate the helicopter attack that's always going to come after that. This helicopter attack looks kind of scary, but it's not that scary because it always comes after certain other moves. There's only 3 moves that it comes after, and only 2 of them are common, so you pretty much always know when this is about to happen, and it's very easy to react to as long as you know what you're doing, so it's really a blessing when he uses this helicopter attack. Whenever he does, all you have to do is dodge left to avoid that first sword swing that he does always before he does the helicopter attack. And then you can either sprint around to the left while he's helicoptering, or you can dodge another time to the left just to be safe. And then as soon as he's about to land from his helicopter attack, you can do 2 full heavy square off attacks, and this will always stagger him. So that pretty much just means anytime he ever does the helicopter attack, you can always stagger him directly after, as long as you just memorize how to dodge it. The situations that you're going to see this helicopter attack are always after the overhead hammer slam, sometimes after a cartwheel attack, which I'll go over later, and then sometimes after you parry as well. He'll never do this helicopter attack in any other situation, so you can always anticipate when it's coming, and then you'll always be able to get a guaranteed stagger whenever he does it, because you can just do those 2 heavy square off attacks, and 2 heavy square off attacks in a row are always going to stagger him. And because of this, you can almost always get a critical hit before you get him down to like 80% health. And whenever he does get to 80% health, he's always going to use the sword rain attack next, where he kind of stands in place and summons a bunch of swords up in the air, and then like a couple seconds later they start to rain down. And this attack has a pretty long windup. It gives you enough time to be able to do a heavy square off attack while he's winding up. And considering you can always get a heavy square off attack after you get a critical hit because you have enough time to do that while he's getting up, and the sword rain attack is always going to come at 80% health, and it's got a pretty big windup, enough to do another heavy square off attack safely. This means if you manage to stagger him before 80% health, you can pretty much always do a stagger chain and just stagger him again, because you can just do 2 square off attacks before he actually is able to do anything else. And this is the reason that I suggested square off is the best weapon to use against Morgott, just because you can stagger him a whole bunch using it. And this is that cartwheel attack I mentioned earlier, where he can use the helicopter attack after this one. And whenever he does the cartwheel, you're going to want to dodge backwards with him whenever he does his sword lunge, so that you can end up right next to him after you've both kind of jumped. And you have enough time to do a light attack right after that, but then you're going to want to anticipate immediately that sword swing that comes right before the helicopter attack. So whenever you see the cartwheel, you're going to dodge backwards, do a light attack, and then immediately dodge to the left in order to avoid that helicopter attack sword swing. And of course that means you're going to be able to get a guaranteed stagger, because anytime he does the helicopter, that is a guaranteed stagger. He does have a couple other things he can do besides the helicopter, that being in phase 1 he can do like a sword poke, which leads into just a sword combo, or in phase 2 he can do the cursed blood thrust attack, which again I'll just go over that later on in the video. And if you did opt to roll away from him instead of with him when he does the cartwheel attack, then he's going to follow it up with like a spear poke, or a spear throw, or a dagger throw, or a jumping hammer slam, usually. All of those are pretty easy to dodge, so if you really need to make some distance so you can heal or something, then dodging away from him is the way to go. And speaking of that jumping hammer slam, this is him doing that right now. If he does, all you'll have to do is dodge forward and do a light attack. You don't really have enough time to do anything other than a light attack, because then he'll just start to use other moves pretty quickly after this. One of Morgott's limited amount of ranged attacks is the Holy Spear Throw. This attack has a pretty long windup, and the projectile itself, the spear, is very, very fast going through the air, so you pretty much just want to dodge as soon as you see it leave his hand. And since the windup is kind of long, you are able to run directly up to him while he's attempting to throw his spear, and if you're standing right next to him, it won't hit you. It'll just go right over your head, and you'll be able to do a couple of light attacks. If you remain kind of far away from him after he does the Holy Spear Throw, he's most likely going to do a jumping sword spear attack, in first phase at least. And just like the jumping hammer attack, it's pretty easy to dodge. All you have to do is, when he's about to land, just dodge forward and do a light attack. Or if you're able to anticipate him doing this, like for example after a spear throw, you can start running forward, and then if you do sprint forward when he does this, you can just end up right behind him when he lands, and that won't hit you. You're safe back there, and then you can do like a heavy square off attack while you're back there. His last spear attack is just like a spear poke that he can do when you're at close range, and this is always going to be followed up by a sword swing, so that's just something you have to keep in mind. When you dodge the spear poke, you always have to dodge the sword directly after. And that is a combo starter, so then you'll, after you dodge that sword swing after the spear, you'll have to dodge a bunch of other stuff too. Whenever you end up behind Morgott, he's most likely going to do this tail sweep move, and this can be dealt with either by doing a jumping heavy attack or by dodging to the right and doing a light attack. This is that Holy Swords Rain move I was talking about earlier. Whenever he reaches 80% health, he's always going to do this, but after that, after he's below 80% health, he can still do it just randomly. If he does it right after a critical hit, you should do the same thing that you were doing before, where you just do another heavy square off attack, and that will stagger him because hopefully you did that just directly after the critical hit already. But if he just does it like in the middle of the battle at a neutral and you don't think you're going to stagger him by doing a heavy square off, then you just want to unlock your camera and look up in the air and kind of run away and just go to a spot where there's not going to be any sword rain. You can see the swords up in the sky. So just go to a spot where you're not standing under them and then just throw a couple of kukris and wait for him to engage you again. This sword rain does last kind of a long time, like the swords will continue to fall for kind of a long time. So while this is happening, I would recommend just concentrating on dodging moves, because if you're just doing the fight like you normally do and the sword rain is happening, then he could sometimes like push you into it, and so obviously you have to kind of be aware of that. You don't want to get pushed into it. And something else to keep in mind is after the sword rain attack that he does, he will very commonly do this sword hammer spin move where he like lunges up to you and then just uses his sword and a hammer to just spin a bunch of times. And this is kind of a hard move to dodge because he does lunge up to you before he starts doing it, but if you see him start doing this, then you're just going to want to start backpedaling as soon as you possibly can, and then when he reaches you, just spam dodge and dodge backwards like twice or 3 times if you're paranoid, and then you can just throw a kukri or use some other ranged attack to punish him. This is also something that you can parry. It's easy to see coming, and so that means it's easy to parry. And honestly, parrying it is, in my opinion, easier than dodging it, so just something to keep in mind if you're trying to do like a parry fight. Another common move he's going to use is the Holy Sword Slash Normal Sword Slam move, and this starts in 2 different ways. He'll either do like a hop to the left a little bit, and then he'll do a Holy Sword Slash, or he's going to do a diagonal slash with his regular sword, and then the Holy Sword Slash, and then the Normal Sword Slam after that. So either a Sword Slash or a hop, and then the Holy Sword Slash, and then the regular Sword Slam. And that regular Sword Slam that comes after the Holy Sword Slash it's got kind of a long wind up, like he waits a little while before he does the slam. You really want to just strafe behind him while he's like holding his sword up in the air, and then that allows you to do a safe, heavy square off attack. This is the best move because if you're standing in front of him, he is going to, after he does the sword slam, do just a couple of really quick like knife slashes, and since those come out so quickly, they're pretty hard to dodge, although you can anticipate them coming because they're always coming after this attack if you stay in front of him. But they won't come out when you're behind him, so that's the reason you're always going to want to strafe around to his back and then do that heavy square off attack. But if you are stubborn and you just want to stay in front of him for some reason, he's going to do those 2 dagger slashes really quickly, and then he's always going to transition from that into a sword hammer swing, and then into an overhead hammer slam, and then into a helicopter attack. And every time he uses that helicopter attack, you are going to guaranteed get a stagger. So if you don't want to strafe behind him for that heavy square off attack and you want to stay in front of him instead, then you can go through that whole ordeal of dodging all those attacks, and then you can get a guaranteed stagger. And the only other like sensical way of dealing with this attack is since that normal sword slam move is kind of slow, it's got like a wind up to it, it's also pretty easy to parry. So if you are parrying, that is another move that I would recommend learning how to parry, because it's pretty much a free one. And this other move here, the sword slash hammer slam, it kind of starts looking like he's gonna do the sword hammer swing, where he swings in a circle. And you can just dodge twice to avoid this. Just dodge that slash and then the slam, and you can get 1 light attack after you dodge this. Not anything more than that because he recovers quickly. Or if you're feeling kind of fancy, you can also dodge that first sword slash and then run around to Morgott's back before he does the hammer swing. If you are standing on the ground when he does the hammer swing, the shockwave is still going to hit you, so you have to do a jumping attack in order to dodge that like shockwave. So there's options with that attack, including parrying, because this move is just as easy to parry as the sword hammer spin move. So again, if you're learning how to parry things, if you're carrying a parry shield around, you might as well learn this attack right here. Something to consider though is if you are parrying him, you're going to have to parry him 3 times in order to actually stagger him. And for this reason, I think the square off method, where you just do a whole bunch of square offs instead of parrying, is the better method. Something else he commonly uses is this gliding approach move, where he kind of like sprints a little bit and approaches you. He's always going to lunge with his sword kind of to the right after he does that gliding approach, and what you're going to want to do is dodge right with him so that you land next to him after he does that lunge, and most of the time you can do a light attack after this. There's no guarantees for what he's going to do next after this, it's just a combo starter. There's no like, he will always do this next attack, so just, dodge with him, do a light attack, and then just wait for him to do something else. Another kind of random thing he does is the sword retreat, where he swings his sword at you and then jumps backwards. Whenever he jumps backwards, you're just going to want to throw a kukri at him or just use some other kind of ranged attack. I keep saying kukri in this video because that's the ranged attack that I choose to use. I'm using square off, so I don't have like an Ash of War that's a ranged attack. And kukris inflict bleed and they do a decent amount of damage, so that's what I would recommend for rune level 1 characters for a ranged attack. Another retreating move he can do is this dagger retreat, where he slashes a dagger at you and then jumps backwards and throws another dagger at you, or 3, a fan dagger. It's not safe to do a kukri throw after this because he can immediately transition from the retreat move into more dagger throws, and those come out very quickly, so if you throw a kukri right after he does the dagger retreat and then he immediately starts doing more dagger throws, then you're going to get hit. And speaking of daggers, he does do this double dagger slash move sometimes out of neutral, and this move is always followed up by the sword hammer swing. So whenever he does it, just dodge to the right, that dodges the 2 slashes, and then anticipate that sword hammer swing, which you can then dodge and just do a light square off attack. And then like I said earlier, the sword hammer swing is always going to be followed up by the overhead hammer slam, and then that is always followed up by the helicopter attack, and that always guarantees a stagger. So as long as you learn how to dodge that chain of attacks, then whenever he does this double dagger slash attack, you know by the end of that chain, you're gonna guarantee a stagger. So I like seeing this move come out. This is just a clip of him throwing some daggers. He can do it out of neutral, or he can do it as part of combos or after his like dagger retreat move. Just something to keep in mind is he can either do 1 or 2. Doesn't really have any tell as to whether he's going to do 1 or 2, so you just have to remember that there can be a second one sometimes. And then when you do get Morgott below 60% health, the next time he takes damage or anything touches him really, he's always going to do his phase transition attack. He pretty much just like staggers down and coughs at the ground, and then there's a giant explosion, and then the ground is covered in some kind of liquid. And then in phase 2, anytime he uses an attack that touches the ground, a small like explosion is going to happen in that spot about like 5 seconds later. So it just introduces like a stage hazard that you'll have to deal with in phase 2, but one thing to keep in mind is whenever you are witnessing him do this phase transition attack, you can just throw a bunch of kukris, and you have enough time to throw enough kukris to get a bleed, even if you aren't using like a bleed weapon. And that's something that I would recommend always doing. Just whenever he does the phase transition, just throw kukris until he bleeds, and that is a good chunk of damage that you just get for free. You can also use melee attacks to attack him like as he's doing the phase transition, but you just have to remember that when he actually explodes, you just have to remember when that happens so you can dodge it, and then after the explosion happens, there's going to be some explosions that happen on the ground. They'll just show up where there's kind of like bubbling water, and those will just appear anywhere in the water, and they're going to be all around Morgott when you're directly next to him. So they're most likely going to appear directly under you, and they're most likely going to hit you and you'll die. So it's really unsafe to do it where you're staying really close to him during the phase transition, but it is possible. In phase 2, he has a couple of moves that he doesn't use in phase 1, such as the Cursed Blood Slice. If you're close to him, you just want to sprint around his right side, and then you can use a heavy square-off attack or a charged heavy attack. This is like a move that I love seeing because it's pretty safe and it's easy to dodge just by running around to the right side. But if you're far, he will kind of sprint at you and then do 2 sword swings, both of which you're going to have to dodge. So if you are far, just start backpedaling backwards and then dodge the 2 swings while continuing to backpedal backwards, and that's the best way to dodge that. You can also do this Cursed Blood Thrust, out of neutral, or he can just do it after like a cartwheel attack. The strategy is the same. If you're close, just run around his right side and then do like a charged heavy attack or something like that. Or if you're far, wait for him to sprint up to you, and then when he reaches you, then you can dodge around his right side as well and just get a couple of light attacks in there. I love seeing either of these Cursed Blood attacks because they're both really easy to dodge and they're really easy to punish. And the last move that he uses in phase 2 only is this multi-weapon frenzy attack where he like pulls out a dagger and then changes his armaments very rapidly and just swings them and just kind of has a temper tantrum. When he does this and you're right in front of him, you have to dodge forward and to one side of him to land on the side of him, because this attack goes out in front of him, so if you're on his side, it's not going to hit you. And then once you've dodged it and you're on his side and he's doing it, then just kind of run around him and then run away, because this attack does happen for a little while, but he doesn't have very good tracking when he's using it, so he'll always just kind of move in the direction that he starts it from. You can just use ranged attacks while he's doing it, and that's the best way to punish. And the last thing that you should keep in mind with this battle is Margit's Shackle is a very, very, very powerful item. When you're doing this battle, it has 2 charges and it will always stagger him whenever you use it. And that stagger is long enough to give you a free opportunity to do 2 heavy square off attacks, which will always stagger him again. And considering this has 2 charges, that is 2 guaranteed critical hits that it gives you. And if you can get those 2 critical hits in before he starts his sword rain attack in phase 1, that sword rain attack is going to give you a 3rd guaranteed critical hit. And after doing that, then you've pretty much skipped phase 1. After that 3rd critical hit, I like to throw a kukri in order to get him into his phase transition, because if you're farther away from him during his phase transition, it's a lot safer, and you can just throw enough kukris to get a bleed out on him. And that is like a huge amount of this fight that you've just skipped. You're already in 2nd phase, and you didn't have to really dodge a whole lot. It's just the power of Margit's Shackle, so it's something you might want to use if you're struggling a little bit. It'll pretty much always get you to 2nd phase safely. Now, the rest of this battle is just me doing a couple of hitless fights on him at rune level 1, weapon level 0. The first fight is medium roll without Margit's Shackle, and the second fight is with Margit's Shackle, so you can see the power of it if you want. And these fights are really just meant to give you an idea of the flow of the battle and how long it takes and that kind of thing. So feel free to watch them if you want, and I hope that you subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this and want to see more rune level 1, weapon level 0 content in the future. Thanks.
forgiven.